It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate. Oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris.
And my name's Mike.
And this week we're reviewing Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. Mike.
Ooh, I know that seems like there's enthusiasm behind there, but it just sounds like you have a knife to my throat and you want my wallet.
Okay, how about this? How about we start off with reviewing Fallout on Amazon? How about that instead?
Okay, that's better. That's better.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll talk a little bit. I've not seen the whole season, Mike. I assume you have at this point, but we'll talk about Fallout here at the start of the show. The Red Hulk, Mike, is confirmed. I know you're worried about this, being confirmed, but it's through McDonald's Toys, which is the weird part for me. So we'll talk about what that means. Superman has recently cast its Ma and Pa Kent. Well, I'll see if you even know who these actors are, Mike. That's going to be the fun part, and more. I'm
usually good at noticing faces, but I'm sure once you say the names, I won't recognize them. But I do have to say at the top of the show, I am in a different environment around different creatures this week. The wife and I are house/dog sitting this weekend, so I am in an unfamiliar room with an unfamiliar animal. Well, I mean, I'm familiar with the animal, but my wife is working a gig right now, so it's just me and this dog. And I don't know anything about dogs. I didn't grow up with dogs. I have a very traumatic slumber party I went to as a child where I was swarmed by corgi puppies, and that's when I learned I was very allergic to dogs.
That sounds traumatic. Was it the traumatic? Was that the traumatic part of the allergy? The traumatic part.
the allergy. The puppies was amazing and adorable.
Okay, cool.
I still remember looking at all of them and oh yes, please crawl all over me. I love it. And then later in the night, I had to go to the adult supervisor and be like, it's hard to breathe. And then they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to call your parents. So essentially before my wife left for the day, I literally had to ask her, I was like, how often do dogs have to go outside? How often do they use the bathroom? I don't know the little machinations about dogs.
Boy.
So I've learned a little bit over the past couple days.
Are you going to apply this to your future fatherhood here in several months?
I guess. I mean, I'm learning how to water and feed something from a bowl on the floor, but I'm looking around right now just to kind of get my bearings. Sometimes the dog is underneath me. Sometimes the dog's behind me. I have gone out of my way. There's 2 squeaky balls in this house, and I have found one of them, and I put it up high on a stool. So there is a 0% chance that we could be in the middle of recording this podcast, and this dog walks in with a squeaky purple ball, and everyone's going to hear it.
Well, you tell me. I have 3 cats, and at any point they could come and meow at me. So it's part of it, right? We have stuff
and
going on.
If there is a whiff of another canine on the sidewalk outside, this dog will bark as well. So I can't do anything about it. I can't control this creature. I am in its home. Yeah. I am the intruder that feeds it. So just a heads up, a little bit of detail, a little bit of seasoning for the podcast this week.
Very exciting. Well, I was also going to say, I thought you were literally talking about our new background on YouTube that we have going on right now, because I got a creative inspiration watching some of the Deadpool trailer. Mike, you took that and applied your artwork to it, and we have a new background that we're playing with on our video. So if you've not gone over to Superhero Slate on YouTube and liked and subscribed to our channel, you have a chance to go there and check that out, because I think it's fun. We're having a good time learning this and using our podcast as a creative tool for ourselves.
The TVA is a vibe. I would love to them create some sort of pop-up at a Comic-Con where you could walk into a TVA even cubicle. I would take even a small cubicle that has the old vintage computer typewriters at it, maybe some sort of a hologram of Miss Minutes or something in the corner, and then like I get to pull open a drawer and it's just like a bunch of like infinity stones, you know?
Well, what's crazy about this is the vibe of the TVA is very much like the vibe of Fallout, which we're going to be talking about here in a a little bit, if you will, like that mid-century
like,
modern, like that, like 1950s
what if
retro
everything
futurism.
stopped?
Yeah, which also I think
great.
is kind of the vibe what we've talked about Fantastic Four taking as well. With some of their stuff, so like it's a huge vibe across everything right now, which is great. But I don't want to get into that first, but I do want to say thank you, Mike, for making our new background, and we're just having some fun with it. So anyone who wants to go and check out our video, do that. But Mike, you've been quote unquote trapped, if you will, inside somebody else's home for a few days, and you look like you got to catch up on a TV show that just wrapped up season 2. On Amazon.
Yeah, I've had some time to kill, so I did wrap up watching season 2 of Invincible, and I think I did it the right way. I know that there was like a break, there was like a part 1 and part 2. I couldn't even tell you where that happens in the season because I was able to just kind of watch it continuously over a couple of weeks, and I always forget how good this show is, and it just always impresses me every time I sit down and watch it. One thing that I think is great, and I don't know if you put the praise on the writer and the comic books, you know, the source material, or maybe even the show creator gets a little bit because they're bringing some of that flavor in. But I love it when they just take a moment away from these big characters with these big powers, and they'll just focus on just a random character. Like there's like an assistant to like I don't remember all the characters' name, but there's like this kind of like pencil pusher assistant that works for like the Nick Fury of this world. And like, there's like a whole episode where you like go in and you look at like the trauma he's gone through, like fighting against like evil, just being like a normal like human being. And then there's like another person that's like recovering from like an attack on like a college campus. So it's always kind of fun that they can take a moment. And Chris, you were already familiar with the scene that I had sent you because it was so meta and it was so funny. I'm sure it's already clipped 1,000 times on like YouTube and TikTok.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure people have seen it already, but I just got to organically come across it where Invincible, aka Mark, just goes to a Comic-Con and he's like talking to the creator of his favorite comic book, and they're just having this meta conversation of how long it takes to make an animated show and the shortcuts that you can do to save money on budget, and they're executing all of those shortcuts in the scene that you're watching. Like they're covering their mouths and they're doing very wide shots so they don't have to animate anything. It was really, really funny. So if you go out on YouTube and you find that scene, you can totally watch that, and it's totally out of context. It's not going to spoil anything at all because it is just this isolated moment that you could pretty much pull out of the episode and it wouldn't change the story at all. But it's really, really funny. But yeah, go watch Invincible season 2. And I think just the other day they had posted from one of their official social media accounts that they said season 3 is going to be coming faster than season 2 came. Yeah. So that made me feel better because I just finished it.
They announced 2 and 3 at the same time, and I'm pretty sure they just announced also 4 and 5 of the show. I think it will end with 5. I think maybe they said, or at least they've announced through season 5. So for those who may fear that this show may run its course in 3 seasons, do note that it is getting 5 seasons, is my understanding. From Amazon. Yeah,
this is great. I think there's a lot that James Gunn could kind of take from this story and this execution for his interpretation of Superman and the world that he lives in, because Invincible is an established world with heroes already. The audience and the environment already accepts that superheroes are a thing and they don't have to be explained, and the story is just about following somebody with powers and how they deal with it. And I think that's kind of a similar world that Gunn is going to be introducing in Superman.
And also that aliens exist, right? It's not just superheroes in this world.
Yes.
There are aliens. There are, anything that you've seen in a superhero story, Invincible has parried it, skewered it, enhanced it, if you will. And one of those words is everything. So I wouldn't say it's like gross or grotesque like The Boys, where like, it says superheroes exist. But it's just superheroes and it's very science-based. This is very much like, like people are born with powers, or there's tech people, or there's aliens, and so on and so forth. I will say, one of the others, there are 2 other scenes I've seen, and they're at the end of the season, Mike, and that's what I was kind of hoping for you to get to, is that a voice actor by the name of, I think it's Josh Keaton, voices someone named Spider Agent in there.
Yes, there's a Invincible gets thrown briefly into like a multiversal world where there is a character that is essentially like Spider-Man,
Right.
Animated just like a Spider-Man, shoots web just like a Spider-Man, is fighting an octopus-style villain, and then when the character spoke, I was like, oh, this sounds just like a Spider-Man. They did a really good job like casting somebody so they can say this is a Spider-Man. And then when I looked it up on IMDb, I was like, well, no shit. This person was Spider-Man.
It's the animated version of Spider-Man, right? And we've talked about, Marvel after X-Men 97 wanted to do, Josh Keaton is no stranger to revoicing Spider-Man after all these years as well. And then there was also a scene about joking about someone who is like dressed as a bat, if you will, in there as well.
Oh yeah.
So there's references to Spider-Man and Batman in this, but I will tell you, in the comic book, Spider-Man actually exists. So there's no spoilers here, if you will. They actually had a crossover with Spider-Man in the comic book, Mike, because comic book rights to transfer are much easier. So that's a really fun thing for them to be doing over there. And I don't think that's a spoiler because this is not essential to the plot of the show. It's just little fun things along with. I've seen those clips on YouTube or Shorts or whatever more than probably the one you sent me about the, hey, we're poking fun at cheapening animation, but I think it's really fun. So I can agree with Mike. I've not watched Invincible season 2, but obviously the show is firing on all cylinders. But that's just part of Amazon. And we've talked about this before. Amazon is one of those streaming services that we forget exists until you turn it on, right? Like, I need to watch something. Mm-hmm. I don't go to Amazon Prime right away. It's not my go-to streaming service, but they have great stuff. We've talked about The Boys. We've talked about Invincible. I'm trying to think of anything else on Amazon. There are lots of things on Amazon that are good. And one of the things that has just launched, not this week, but 2 weeks ago, we're behind a little bit, but that's fine. It's 8 episodes of Fallout, the series based on the video game series of the same name made by Bethesda. And I would say it's not even based. It actually exists in parallel in the same universe as the video games, Mike, which I think is awesome.
Chris, I feel like this is a great time for me to tell you, I feel like I've learned so much about Fallout in the last 2 weeks, like the world in general, because you've played some of these games. You understand the world that we're dealing with. You just watched the first episode before we started recording. Mm-hmm. I've watched them all already, so I feel like I've been thrown into like a brand new world. And at first, after I watched all 8 episodes, no spoilers, obviously, we're not going to spoil anything for anybody out there. I was like, okay, this is interesting. They're working with a lot of stuff here. But then that's when the algorithm started hitting me. That's when the show started popping off and hitting the general public. And even though I've never engaged with anything Fallout before, I'm getting Fallout Reels. I'm getting Fallout TikToks in my For You page. And I'm seeing people doing deep dives on other vault numbers and what experiments and unique situations have run with those vaults. And I was like, oh, this is where the world really takes off. This is where you get to use this like kind of device to tell all of these different stories. So now I'm understanding how there's all of these different games that takes place at different parts of the world, and there's different stories that you tell in each of them. I don't know exactly how many games deal with how many different vaults, but it's cool to see that there's a mythology there. So I almost appreciate that the show was made because it's introduced me to this franchise that I haven't really touched or played at all. But I do kind of feel a little wanting in a way of like, now I want to play some Fallout, but I don't really know what to do, because before this show came out, the only thing I knew about Fallout was there was a game called New Vegas, which I assume must be one of the more popular installments in the series, because that's the one I immediately thought about. So there's some sort of name recognition there.
Yeah, it's just got a better name than a sequel name. Like it's like
yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's like, I think a newer one called 76 that nobody liked. Or at least when it launched, nobody liked it. So I don't really know what to do with this kind of like newfound interest of Fallout.
So let me go ahead and tell you, I've played enough Fallout for you, Mike. Do not stress. I will tell you where you want to start. So my journey started in Fallout 3, which is essentially, have you played Skyrim or any Elder Scrolls game, Mike, of that nature?
I played Skyrim for like 5 minutes when it came with like a bundle that I bought, but that's about it.
So it's a Bethesda formula, right? Obviously there's the Elder Scrolls games, there's the Fallout games, and obviously the new one. I forget the name. It's the one in space. I can't think of it off the top of my head here. But so you essentially, I was telling my wife this because she was asking me when we were watching episode 1. In those games, you are a vault dweller being let out of the vault for the first time. So the opening of the games are usually in your vault, and then you go out into the world, and then you have to deal with everything out there. And that's when you uncover, again, as you see the different factions, right? The mutants, the Enclave, different things out in the world, other vault dwellers. But like what's beautiful about the Fallout games, Fallout 3 was then followed by Fallout New Vegas, which is essentially like Halo 3 was followed by Halo Reach, if you will, right? Like you know those games, like the sequel ones. But like Fallout isn't about the end of the world. The end of the world's already happened. You're not saving the world at the end of the day. Like you're just saving where you are in the country or world at that time. So Fallout 3, I think, is set in Massachusetts area, up in the Bay, and then Fallout New Vegas, obviously in Vegas. Fallout 4, I forget where it is, but you are very much, you come out of your vault and you just have that region to deal with. You're not saving the entire world. The world is already gone, and you're just trying to get by in those areas, which is really, really fun. Fallout 76 was a game that, yes, it did launch to not good reception, but it is one of the few games that has come back and bounced back, if you will. Like a game that launched like, oh, we don't like it, but now everyone's like, okay, they have fixed 76 to make it, but it's a different type of game. Fallout 3 and 4 New Vegas are first person shooter kind of games with like RPG elements for your special stats, if you will. Wink wink for those who've watched the show. And then Fallout 76 is more like a survival crafting game with multiplayer. So like that's where people are like, oh, it's a different type of game. It's a different type of format. So if you're not in the, crafting and survival type of multiplayer, Mike, 3, New Vegas, and 4 are up your alley. 76 is a little bit different gameplay, but it doesn't mean like, there's not good quality stuff there. But Fallout is, the games are really, really fun. I'm one episode in, and I'm on board. I'm absolutely on board. This is I think we've talked about this before, but one of the actors, Walton Goggins, right? He is the actor who can make anything great. Anything he's in is great. Even Ant-Man 2, Mike, Ant-Man and the Wasp, he's in it. He elevates his performance in that, right? Like he knows what he's there for. Absolutely love it. We're gonna finish this season. We have just been, as people listened last week, I've traveled this week. Obviously I had to pause my entire world to watch Rebel Moon Part 2. But Fallout on Amazon, I'm excited to finish the season. And with that, for those who are maybe on the fence, it is confirmed for a season 2. So that's got to be good news all around, Mike, for everybody.
Yeah, there's a moment in the second episode. It's a set piece of kind of like Old West kind of gunslinger motif that happens in that second episode. When I was watching it, I leaned over to my wife and I go like, this show is expensive. That's what always is getting me to watch these new Amazon Prime originals, is just when I'm like, oh wow, this cost a lot of money. So I feel like even if it's a show that I wouldn't normally watch, like the Lord of the Rings one that came out, Rings of Power, not like a super huge Lord of the Rings nerd, but it was like, I want to see that money put to screen. Fallout's definitely doing something pretty similar. Yep. A lot of awesome sets. There's only so much things left over from the 1950s in like these set warehouses, in Hollywood or Atlanta. So you either have to like make brand new props, or you have to like 3D model the stuff and put it in a volume or whatever. But
I would say some of that also has that futuristic like enhancement, like when you see Fallout, like the 50s for that was on like our straight 50s, but like the TVs have like that weird, like they're too thin for 1950 televisions, right? They would have to been way deeper kind of deal. And some of the obviously in the first of this, not you've seen in the trailers, and it's all like everyone has like their own personal robot in the 50s as well, like that takes care of their house. So it's definitely interesting to see like how much of the 50s plus, to me, it's Tomorrowland from Disney World, right? How much of that did they really implement in the games and like carry over 200 years in the future when you emerge from the vaults?
Yeah, it's like, what if the retro future that they predicted actually happened and then it got nuked? is the kind of aesthetic setup that I like. I mean, we won't talk too much about the story because you're only one episode in. When you end up finishing it, we'll come back around to it. Yeah. But I did see some kind of hot takes after the show came out that said, oh, this could have been better maybe if it was released once a week or twice a week, or sometimes Amazon's been known to drop 3 episodes a week. I don't know why they didn't go with that strategy, but Chris, you're more than welcome to do that. We can kind of tune back in here in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I'm curious. I'd be curious what you think about the story and the world and how it grows.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm very intrigued. It's got some very mysteries. The mystery of the ghoul early on, right, is got me intrigued. Obviously because mutants in the wasteland, like the people in the vault think no one thing's alive on the top land except mutated people are just savages, and while that is some true, like there are parts of again the world that did not get nuked that are safe, right? And you get to see kind of that with the enclave and the big powered suits, right? Like when you think of Fallout, everyone thinks of the powered suits, the big mech suits, and some of that stuff felt really good. There's an interrogation scene in the first episode where there's one like right behind one of the main characters, and you can just feel the weight, the terrifyingness of that big mech suit and whoever's inside of it in there, which was really fun. Again, it looks great. It's it's got her dad, Kyle MacLachlan, right? He was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's known for Twin Peaks. He's a great actor. Absolutely love it that he's in there. There's a lot of familiar faces as well. I don't know if you got that vibe on or at least in episode 1. There's a guy who tells Spider-Man to do a backflip. And he's like, I think in Shang-Chi, the guy who's filming on the bus, he's like doing his personal blog.
Zach Cherry. He's also in the first season of Severance. Hopefully he returns for the second season.
Yeah, so he's one of like the Vault, I guess, leaders. And then next to him is Leslie Uggams, who plays Blind Al in Deadpool.
Oh yeah, that's why she looked familiar.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I get like a lot of these people are familiar. It's been fun, but like I'm excited to watch more. I feel Horrible is taking me so long, but like even people I know who like don't like Fallout or are not familiar with Fallout have been getting into Fallout, playing the games, watching the show again. Even I'm like, this is great. This is one of those things, one of these, I guess, properties that is risky to put out here, right? Like when you're adapting an established property and people are like, oh, am I going to like it? Am I going to hate it? And it's come out on top. I think that's pretty good. Like that's really good. And I would say, honestly, as you mentioned, the weekly stuff, Rings of Power was weekly, if I remember correctly, when Amazon did it, because there was discussion every week. So I'm sad they're not doing it, but maybe for season 2, maybe they'll get better. They're like, hey, we'll space this out a little bit, because they just came off of loading or debuting Invincible, like you mentioned.
What Fallout game should I go play right now, Chris, if I wanted to jump into the world?
3 or 4.
You mentioned Fallout 3. Fallout New Vegas seems to be the popular one. I did a little bit of research, and it seems like this is one of those franchises that if I wanted to go back to like the original, it's kind of like going back to the original Metal Gear, where you're on like a kind of more of a retro kind of console. 1
and 2 are not very... people like them, but they're not like the ones that you're playing now. Like they don't have when you go to shoot someone, you stop and then you can aim at different body parts, right? And see different percentages and the damage, and you can like dismember people. I always say 3 was where I started. 3 is a good one. 4 is also good. 4 is a modernization of that, very similar kind of ideas if you want to do with 4. I played 4. I did not finish it. I get overwhelmed with those open world games a little bit. I'm like, I just don't know what to do, so I'm like, I'm not going to do anything and put it down. But that's nothing against, that's not a knock against Fallout 4. That's just how I, take the game. So I would say 3 or 4. New Vegas, I would say do 3 the New Vegas if I would to say jump that in. Simply because 3 is going to set the world that New Vegas is in, right? You're going to understand the background before you jump into New Vegas. 'Cause New Vegas is essentially like what they would call an expansion game these days, where you're like, okay, you finished 3, now you get to go to New Vegas kind of deal. I think that would help you. I really enjoyed New Vegas as well. 3 in New Vegas, I put a lot of time into back in the college days of Xbox 360 era. So, yeah, absolutely, I'm having a good time.
I'm on the PlayStation Store right now.
Yep.
It looks like Fallout 4 is only $5 right now, that's incredibly affordable. Yeah. Fallout 76 is $8.
they're
Fallout
all
4.
on sale right now because of the show, I think. Actually.
Yeah. But I'm not seeing Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas, at least on this first page. I just would have assumed that they would have been right on the front.
They were
I'll have to do a little bit
PS3.
more research here.
Yeah, so I don't know. PlayStation. Oh, you have to do PS Now to get Fallout 3 in New Vegas on PlayStation.
Okay, that might be worth it.
If they got a free trial, you could test it out. Four is not bad. If 4 for $5, you said 4 was $5.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh hell yeah, get that. Yeah, just do that. I think that's pretty standard stuff. So absolutely, I'm excited. It's got the 3 main casts. I'm excited to see how they all mix in the season as we kind of go forward. Then where does season 2 take us? So absolutely on board for Fallout. Jumping into the news, let's get into some news. We'll do our the long anticipated Rebel Moon Part 2 review at the end of the show for everybody who's sticking around, because we can talk spoilers about that. But Superman, James Gunn has confirmed that actor Pruitt Taylor Vince, who is known for Constantine, I believe it's the movie, and Neva Howell, who is an actress from Lucky Logan, have joined as Ma and Pa Kent. So I don't know these people by their names, if I'm going to be honest with you. Right? Just by going over this.
I think we just take this as a sign that the progress of the movie is continuing, and
so
that's all we need to worry about.
I'm actually going to go a little. I'm going to say this is a better news, because I don't give a flying rat's ass who Ma and Pa Kent is in a Superman movie, other than they're good actors, right? Because if you remember in Man of Steel, they got Kevin Costner to do it, right? And then they killed him off pretty soon. Like, if you had a higher named actor, they're going to overshadow some of the movie, right? And if this is a not necessarily an origin movie, but a movie where superheroes already exist, we don't need to go back to Smallville and see him raised as a kid. There needs to be some of that. And if you look at the photos of this actor, Vince or Pruitt and Neva, they're not like they're Hollywood actors, but they're not Hollywood pretty, if that makes sense. Like, he's a slightly he looks a lot like Kingpin, the actor who plays Kingpin in the new Daredevil stuff, in some of his newer things. Like, they're a bit larger. They're farm people. They look like farm people. And I'm like, that's great. They don't need to be Hollywood pretty people living on a farm to raise Superman, right? They just need to be a farmer and his wife, and they find this alien baby and they raise him the right way. And I think that's the important part of this at the end of the day. I was looking up stuff he was in. He's been in a lot of TV shows, but if you look him up, I want to say it's probably Constantine, where he's got like a hat on and a goatee, but you can definitely look up.
Everyone in that movie is wearing a hat or a goatee, so it doesn't narrow it down too much.
True.
It's the goatee movie, but I get it.
Yeah, when you see him, you'll take a look. But that is some casting. They're filming it. I think they're back filming it. Maybe I think he took a week off to do some weekends, or he's filming Peacemaker on the weekends or something like that. I'm like, this is gonna be interesting when all this coalesces together and all comes out. So we'll see you guys more. Shifting into Sonic the Hedgehog gears, we have some confirmation. Keanu Reeves will voice Shadow the Hedgehog. Mike, they are just grabbing great actors to voice the villains in these movies. Along the way,
honestly, it's pretty shocking. I don't know if this is just, you show up for a week in an ADR booth and that's all you have to do, because this isn't one of those things where they're like motion capturing Keanu Reeves to make the perfect Shadow the Hedgehog. But I don't know, I'm not like this in-depth deep Sonic fan that has to they have to nail these characters.
Right.
They kind of almost need casting like this to get me invigorated.
Yeah,
right. Now they can put Idris Elba on the movie poster. They can put Keanu Reeves on the movie poster. I mean,
Jim Carrey, obviously.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you have Eggman Jim Carrey, as we talked about last week, even the card one, the big one. But like that, I mean, Idris Elba's even got his own spin-off show he's doing, which is probably more than just a day or two in the AER booth. Obviously, he's not filming. Like you said, they have models on set for filming this. They're not doing it, but they're doing more. Like they're committed to the roles a little bit more. It doesn't feel like a cash in, if you will, right? But Keanu Reeves' voice, I honestly, when you hear his voice, that's a dark voice. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be cool. He's gonna be able to really bring this character to life for a quote unquote Shadow the Hedgehog, a clone, if you will. I think he's a clone. I don't know the lore of Sonic. It's a fun, fast-paced game on Sega. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool news that they're bringing that. I'm surprised they didn't announce it last week, if I'm going to be honest, at the CinemaCon. Like, that's a weird thing to wait till the next week to do. But
yeah, maybe they were still pinning them down.
Yeah, sign that contract. But also last week they showed some footage and a title card for Transformers 1 at CinemaCon, and then this week we, as regular people, get the trailer for this upcoming animated origin movie of Optimus Prime and his original, I forget his original name, and Megatron, before they became those characters and became serious robots who have morals and stuff. This trailer just blew me away because I didn't expect it to be actually funny. I was like, oh, they're going to be serious robots and stuff like that. And it's actually like, oh, this is just like a buddy comedy kind of thing with robots.
Yeah, this was a weird experience for me because this is probably one of the many instances where we've been recording this podcast for close to 500 episodes now. So I'm sure in one of these we had already talked about that this movie was a thing and it was being made and it was happening. But I forgot all the details. So I was like, what is this Transformers 1 trailer? I just assumed it was going to be another straight to Netflix thing because I swear 90% of Transformers stuff is just Netflix originals. Like it's an animated show or it's an animated movie or it's like an anime or something that no one's ever heard of before, and then they're slapping it on Netflix. So when I went to click play, I didn't realize that this is like a feature film that's coming out in theaters, and the trailer opens up with Chris Hemsworth talking to the screen. I'm like, what is happening here? What's going on? So it is kind of strange because it feels like every new entry to the feature animated space has some sort of unique kind of quirk to the animation, right? Like I'm thinking Mutant Mayhem, the Spider-Verses, or Mitchell's versus the Machine, some sort of visual hook to it. And this one doesn't really have that. I'm not saying it looks bad. It just kind of looks
Transformers
standard. If we rendered the Transformers as an animated film, what would they look like? So visually it's not exactly popping off, but you hit the nail on the head where this does look funny. Not only are the jokes hitting, but there's funny comedic timing for the characters. I don't remember the exact moment, but one of the, I think it's maybe Keegan-Michael Key's character,
Bumblebee,
there's some. Is that who it is? Bumblebee? Okay.
Yeah. He's called B251, and he hasn't got his name. It's we'll call you B, and you're it's Bumblebee.
That makes sense because I think he is yellow in the trailer. Yeah. There's some sort of catastrophe that happens off screen. Then the second the camera cuts back to him, he turns 180 degrees in one frame and just starts booking it the other way. And I was like, oh, this is really funny. So I feel like they have a lot of talented people, hopefully, behind this movie. But I feel like it's going to be kind of hard to maybe find the audience because most of the audience out there right now only knows Transformers really from Michael Bay, right? And we're going to be just living with these characters on Cybertron, which is a weird thing for me to wrap my head around because they transform into cars in this trailer, but they're not actually cars. It's kind of like an alien looking locomotive, but it essentially is oh, okay, it's a car. And then there's a shot where it shows the soon to be named Optimus Prime is flying off into the horizon in the shape of a semi truck. I just find that really funny. It's this is a planet light years away, and they kind of already are looking like cars. So I don't know. I just find it kind of humorous, but
that's always been
good. I mean, yeah, it's good.
That's always been Transformers. But I think the thing with Transformers is it's always taken itself too seriously. If you go back and watch the cartoons from the 80s, that stuff doesn't really hold up that well. It's oh, that's your G.I. Joe era where they were just cranking these out to make toys right along the way. And, then the Michael Bay ones are oh, we're too serious, and, we're obviously here to, kill each other and do war crimes against each other. And then this one's all right, this is funny. Obviously, like you mentioned, there's Chris Hemsworth, there's Brian Tyree Henry, Scarlett Johansson, Keegan-Michael Key, Steve Buscemi is in this, and Lawrence Fishburne. I don't know if you caught their voices. I caught
Buscemi's name at the end there, but I didn't know who he was supposed to be.
Yeah, I think he's he's not the guy who gives them the powers. I think he's like one of the villain ones there. But like, you know, obviously they're transforming. Like this is the origin of how they got to transform and stuff like that. So I'm not holding the lore of Transformers precious in this. I'm like, but it's going to be fun. I just didn't expect it to be funny. I was like, oh, this is going to be an actual humorous movie compared to like, we've got to stop the Autobots because they're going to kill, or the Decepticons because they're going to destroy Earth again because there's some MacGuffin along the way, right? Like the spark of leadership. So I'm excited. I don't know. I don't expect a Transformers 2 or a sequel out of this, but it is nice to see them doing something with Transformers rather than just kind of running it into the ground along the way, if you will, for that kind of stuff. So check out that trailer in here, and we'll talk to you guys when it comes out. I think it's September 20th. So late summer, early fall movie. Mike, you probably won't be able to see that, but hopefully it'll be on Paramount, who owns that stuff later, sooner than later. Moving into that same realm of, I think this was a streaming movie, right? Five Nights at Freddy's hit streaming at the same time it went to theaters. It was last year.
Yeah, it was a dual release strategy.
Yeah,
simultaneous release.
Yeah. One of the few ones there, and the sequel was announced this week. To due to the success of the first one, not only on streaming but in theaters, it made a bunch of money back. A lot of Five Nights at Freddy's fans went out to see this, so that was great. And they're shooting a 2025 release with the cast returning for that. So
yeah, not surprised. I feel like this is definitely going to be a franchise that's going to go probably like 5 or 6 movies, and I feel like it's going to ebb and flow in quality, right? It's going to be that math equation that studios like it's a Blumhouse film, right?
It is.
Yeah, they're always just doing that cost versus benefit equation for all of their films. So the second, it drops off and it's not making money anymore, they'll ditch it.
Right. Yeah, and I think, as long as the cost to make it doesn't balloon into like tentpole level stuff, they're probably always going to see a return, right? Like there are enough Five Nights at Freddy's fans out there that people like the movie. It wasn't just like the fans, people enjoyed the movie as well. So I see this, I wouldn't say how many games are they on now? 4, 5? Maybe?
Oh God, I don't know. I think there's a lot of like Splinter games as well. They do have the advantage though of, I think really the only character that they really have to keep bringing back would be Matthew Lillard. So I could see maybe as the franchise goes on, his rate goes up. Yeah. But this seems like the type of franchise where you can throw in a brand new main character every movie. It doesn't have to be Josh Hutcherson every film.
Or if it was Josh Hutcherson, I think he'd come back simply just, maybe for a slight, raise. But like I could see him coming back for one more movie, right? Like doing 2. And then handing it off.
Essentially, what we're trying to say, folks, is that the movie's entertaining, but it's like not good enough to like really warrant a ton of money thrown at it. Yeah. So that's why we're making all.
And the only reason it can get a sequel again and again is if they don't blow the budget every time, right? Like don't balloon this budget because then the return will never be there. We'll never see these again. But for Five Nights at Freddy's fans and the people who thought it was a good film, good for you. Like, great. Horror films, go for it, right? Hang out there, have a good time. Nothing against it. I just don't think we're quite the audience for the opening night to watch it. I think we're streaming later down the road. I don't think the sequel will get a dual release, if I'm going to be honest. For them to, like, we're going to spend more, we got to make more, it's only going to be theaters, and then we might get 3, and then boom, we're done.
Well, I mean, by the time this sequel comes out, Paramount might even be owned by a totally different company, so the regime will probably change.
Yeah, possibly. Paramount, when they came out CinemaCon, I think they kind of knocked down the fact that they were looking to be sold, but maybe, I don't know. We'll see if any. You never know. All these companies gobble each other up all the time. They're like a what's a Hydra, where you cut one head off, 2 more appear down the road, and they'll buy it. But we've got some stuff from streaming next, because this is some exciting news for me, because I love this idea. I am not the audience for this idea, but I love this idea, Mike. On Disney Plus, they are rumored to be creating an always-on channels for their big brands, including Marvel, Star Wars, probably Pixar, Disney, so on and so forth, which uses what's called fast channels, or free ad-supported streaming TV channels, which is what Tubi does. Like, I'm sure Peacock and some other ones do it as well, but like Tubi is known for huge numbers on their fast channels that they keep putting out there. And as you know, this is something I've created on my own home streaming network for myself, because I love not having to pick what's going on. I just go to one channel. What are you showing right now? Boom. I'm playing you. You're my background noise.
Yeah, it's been really useful for me. I kind of equate this feature more with Peacock because that streaming service launched with this feature. And I'm surprised maybe more people don't talk about it, but maybe since it seems like such a normal kind of built-in thing that we all grew up with, aka cable, it almost doesn't seem like a selling point if you have it. Yeah. But it's been great. Like sometimes if you're having like people over during the day, just to like hang out and you just want to like throw something up on the screen, I open up Peacock and there's just tons of random channels like, just throw on whatever random like Office episode is playing, or Peacock also has like an always on like SNL channel. So you can just get like, repeated like sketches just going on and on and on. Yeah. So I think this would be great for Disney because especially since it's such a kid focused platform, your kids in front of the TV, like I don't
want to Bluey channel, put them on the Bluey channel.
Yeah, exactly, and they can just like watch it like through and through, just like how we were with like when we were kids. It's like nostalgia, bringing it to the current day. But the thing that annoys the most about me is I know people are reading this headline and going like, oh my God, all they're doing is just remaking cable, and like I'm not saying they're not bringing a lot of those features back, but people seem to always forget. I harp on this all of the time. The number one feature that streaming services has is you can cancel them whenever the hell you want. Yeah. And people forget the fact that back in the day with cable, you had to sign year-long contracts. And it was costing you like $80+ a month, and you had no way to back out of it. Oh. And they just threw tons of stuff at you that you never used, and you couldn't cancel it.
Well, I would tell you the biggest thing, and to those people who bitch about that, like how much time do you spend on your streaming services trying to figure out what you even want to watch, right? You're like, you spend an hour picking something, and then you're like, I don't really want to watch anything because you don't know what to choose, right? The paralysis of choice. There's too much there. It's not really organized very well. Sometimes you got to dig for stuff unless they're promoting something. So for me, at my own home, I have Dragon Ball channels, Mike, with all the Dragon Ball stuff. We have a Christmas movie channel, we have a Harry Potter channel, we got a Pixar channel, an MCU channel, a non-MCU Marvel channel, a DCU channel, and a couple others I've made along the way, and they're just fun. Whether now that FAST is, they say ad supporting, two of the letters in there, but like if you pay a premium, I think they take the ads out. But I'm like, wouldn't that throw that off a little bit? Like if you were trying to sync up with someone, like, hey, we're watching stuff on Disney Plus, turn it on. But like, I don't know if that matters at the end of the day because they're not putting new stuff on there. But like, this is fine. This is just fine to be like, okay, I'm going to tune into something, put it on in the background. My wife likes to sleep to noise, like TV stuff. I do not care for that. So she'll put something on. I think I created recently a Pokemon channel with all 25 seasons of Pokemon on it. And like, do you care where they are in the Pokemon show, Mike? If you wanted to watch it, no. You're like, Ash is battling someone to become the very best. There's going to be a lesson about friendship, and then the show's going to continue on to the next episode. Team Rocket's going to blast off again. Boom, got it. Some of that stuff, you just need it there for noise, right, in the background. And I think this will be great. Or, as you mentioned, kids. I think that'll be huge. So, especially with Marvel. Marvel's got, 27 movies now? 28 movies? And how many TV shows? Like, that's a lot of content to sift through whenever you can just throw something on and just be watching it kind of in the background. So I'm a huge fan of this. Hopefully other people get on board for those who may use it or do not use it. So very, very excited for that. Moving on, hot news today. This is right before you showed. You even thought you had it up on me, Mike. You thought it was so fresh. Chris doesn't even have this in his show notes. But there's a Deadpool Wolverine trailer tomorrow, brand new one. And it probably includes the CinemaCon footage, but bleeped for the green band, and then probably unedited for the red band stuff on YouTube. So
yeah, this would be the second trailer. So I would imagine we would get more story points.
We actually get
trailer.
Hugh Jackman for the first time. They didn't show him in the first trailer.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's just this silhouette of the Wolverine claws. That's right.
Yeah, I imagine some of that. Probably some more cameos because this movie is rumored to be burdened with cameos to a point. So maybe some of the bigger cameos showing Wolverine, and as you mentioned, probably like, hey, what are we doing along the way? What is this movie about? Kind of thing. So
yeah, this does get me a little worried just thinking about cameos in general of hopefully they have the forethought to not spoil too many of them, because I feel like once you get closer to the release of a movie and they're dropping those TV spots like a couple days before the movie premieres, they're throwing whatever in there to go get you to buy tickets. Hopefully Deadpool, just his iconic look is enough to sell a ticket, and they won't spoil too much, because it's always fun getting surprised by cameos on
the CinemaCon footage was actually filmed for CinemaCon, where it's Deadpool saying, hey, we're gonna do XX cameo. Then Wolverine pushes him out of the frame and it's like, don't spoil the fucking movie. I think that was the exact words like they used. So like, even if like, that's the beauty of Deadpool, right? And Wolverine, they can make their own commercials without showing movie footage for a lot of it, or like even fake it. Like, we're gonna put Deadpool in like movies that like Titanic scenes or stuff like that, even, and fake us out along the way.
Yeah, and I think we would really only talk about a movie like Deadpool with this reverence for like cameos, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really make us sound like very artistic movie aficionados if we're just like cameo, member berry. Just show me things that I'm already familiar with.
Yeah.
But I think in the space of Deadpool, it makes sense and it fits the character. So that's probably why we're
it is
so focused on
it's also the skewering, the send-off of the Fox universe, right? Like they bought the Fox universe. Deadpool's the only movie that lived beyond that is a Fox, and we've seen the set photos of the 20th Century Sign, so we do know or hope that there will be some cameos from the X-Men of those movies. But that will not make or break the movie as long as the story is good and the characters are there, right? I think it's just little icing. This is the colored sprinkles on my cupcakes. The icing's already there, but this is just making it look pretty along the way. And I'm very excited for it. Like said, I'm gonna have we're very, very excited for this to come out in July, and it's just gonna be fun. I think Deadpool's a good time, and there seems to be a great creative team behind it, unburdened from the previous Marvel regime or Disney regime. So we should be ready to rock and roll with this trailer tomorrow, Mike. I'm excited to message you about it, or have anyone else here who sees it messages us in and tell us what you think about it. And honestly, we're ahead of the game because our new TVA studio here that we're filming in on our YouTube video definitely makes us feel like we're part of this Marvel Jesus moment already along the way. Moving along in the Marvel world, the Captain America Brave New World is you're going to be undergoing some extensive reshoots to kind of retool that movie this year. However, toys are decided well before reshoots are decided, right? And we have our first kind of look at some toys here showing off the Red Hulk, if you will, from McDonald's. So it looks like some of these toys were pre-decided a long time ago. We've heard the Red Hulk will be here. We're rumored it's President Thunderbolt Ross, played by Harrison Ford. However, Marvel can do fake outs. They can change the stories. They can maybe it's somebody else, and we're just led to believe it's President Ross along the way. But we do have confirmation that there will be some of these toys in McDonald's Happy Meals, and what looks to be a character who looks literally like the Black Widow in here as well. But I thought she was dead, so it's probably somebody else along the way, Mike.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because this movie was supposed to be out already, right? I think March is when this was.
I think it was February, March. Yeah, it was supposed to be like the 10-year anniversary of Winter Soldier.
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of surprised that this has held out for so long with coming across this, right? But it is kind of weird. Like the cat's out of the bag for the Red Hulk, right? Everyone had theories behind it, but we're seeing it right here, as plain as day. There's a logo up here, and then there's a Red Hulk.
I'm going to go the other way though as well, but they may be leaning into these rumors because you remember Infinity War had the end scene with the Hulk running towards the camera, and he never showed up in there, right? He was in the Hulkbuster suit. They made a whole Funko of the Hulk busting out of the Hulkbuster suit, and that never happened. I'm not saying that this is, but if they're doing extensive reshoots in the summer after these toys are out, they could essentially remove it if they feel he's not part of the movie or adding anything.
I guess that's possible. I mean, the Hulk is historically a CG character, so what is it? Yeah. Just you open up your timeline editor and you just hit the little eyeball icon and then he's gone. Boop.
Yeah. That could, it depends on how much they're retooling the show, right? If they're retooling the show that much, or the movie not show that much, they may be like, okay, well, we're throwing too much at it. But if you get Harrison Ford, you want to use Harrison Ford's name to your advantage, right? Do as much as you can with him. So we'll see how curmudgeon-y he is when he comes back as to do reshoots if he's cranky or not. See how they do it. But you can check out that image in our show notes as well. I mentioned Daredevil earlier in the show. The 2023 or not 2003 version, but they're surprise dropping it on Disney Plus May 1st, Mike, in a couple weeks. Did not know it was not on there, to be honest, but I'm glad it's coming. And for those who may not remember, it features Ben Affleck, Batman himself as Daredevil, Jennifer Garner as Elektra, Colin Farrell the Penguin as Bullseye, Jon Favreau, the director of Iron Man and the Mandalorians, Happy Hogan as Foggy Nelson in that movie, if you remember, and then the late Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin.
Didn't even remember that was Jon Favreau. Huh,
right? Everyone's like, Jon Favreau's in that movie. I'm like, yeah, he was Foggy Nelson. So, I remember going to see this movie in theater and not knowing. I was very confused when I walked out of it, but not knowing why I was confused by this movie. Just how, like, I was like, I don't understand why I'm confused. But now going back, I'm like, this is not a good movie. This is where you try to shove everything in there, and everybody's being shoved in leather suits, and it's very crazy. Not really up to par. They were just making movies at Fox to be making movies. Oh, man. But I'm excited to revisit it. Just 20 years later.
The leather phase of superhero movies was a time.
Yeah. And the bad CGI. I remember when he's like sitting on top of the church in the rain, and then he like spins around down to swing into the cathedral. I mean, I'm like, oh man, this is awful. But I'm excited to revisit some of this because Michael Clark Duncan, again, an actor who kind of elevates everything he's in. You know, we lost him way too soon, so I kind of want to see his take on the Kingpin again when he was just a brute brawler, if you will. So, I'm excited to watch it, but I'm not expecting quality by any means. But I'm glad it's on Disney Plus, and I want to give him that showing, if you will. Speaking of Fox properties, X-Men, the new X-Men movie from Marvel has kind of gotten a description, if you will, in Production Weekly, and it states, I'm going to quote here: Charles Xavier's team of merry mutants is charged with the mission of protecting a world that hates and fears them for their unusual appearances and abilities. And boy, could that not be more generic enough for an X-Men movie.
Yeah, that is like if you ask ChatGPT to give you like the rundown of what the X-Men was, and it just scanned the internet for all descriptions of X-Men storylines. I mean, if we were to take this at face value, right, it seems like they're taking a very standard approach to the X-Men story, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does beg the question of like, what universe does this take place in? If it's Charles Xavier's team, where has Charles Xavier been? He doesn't seem like the type of guy that, you know, stays out of, you know, the catastrophe that's happening within the MCU. Well, seems like a guy that has powers that maybe would have stepped up and done something, you know?
We have no release date for this movie. I think I want to put that out there. We have no release date for this movie. So if this is after Secret Wars, it could be an amalgamate, like, you know, a new kickoff in the MCU, as we talked about, like that soft reboot, if you will. Kamala Khan has been labeled a quote-unquote mutant in Miss Marvel, if you will. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness had the returning Patrick Stewart in his iconic yellow chair from the X-Men animated show in the comic books in there. But, you know, it wasn't this. But, like, it doesn't seem to be a log line. It doesn't seem like, hey, we know the finality of this movie, but more like, hey, we are making an X-Men movie and we're going to follow, you know, what X-Men's done. So I could see this changing. I just don't think they want to fall into the Batman 2 approach. Remember we talked about the Batman 2 not securing studio space in time, and it had to be pushed back a year. Remember we talked about that recently?
Oh, yeah, I did remember.
So I think they're just trying to get ahead of that and secure some studio space to film their stuff in before everybody's like gobbles it up. Because I think this will be post Secret Wars. If I'm going to be completely transparent, this will not be in Secret Wars. It'll be like, we're going to relaunch, and X-Men are going to be one of our big brands. We roll with it out there. Yeah,
I keep imagining this future, right? Like, what does that final Avengers movie look like, right? I got to assume Loki and that, you know, time stream tree or whatever that he's holding together on that throne comes together, and there's this just big catastrophe, singularity, event horizon, black hole type situation, and then there's like, you know, not just like half of the universe blipping, the like entire universe, you know, going away. And then I'm just really curious how you sum how you sum that up as a whole, right? Because when the Avengers Endgame ended, the emotional resonance around it, I mean, obviously it was a big, bombastic popcorn fun, right? That final battle in Endgame, it still gives me chills thinking about it. But we did have, like, character arc wrap-ups, you know? We finally got to see, like, Tony Stark, you know, be the hero he always wanted to be with that, you know, sacrifice. We got to see Captain America finally ride off into the sunset. So it makes me wonder, like, what characters are they setting up to do that? I would think maybe Tom Holland's Spider-Man would be top of that list.
We've talked about Spider-Man being a big part of that. You know, I could see, honestly, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine being carried over as well into that, like kind of sunsetting everything old mutant-wise, if you will.
It's got to be Thor, too. Like,
Thor,
I would think Thor and Spider-Man.
Thor, Doctor Strange, and the Hulk. Those are the three I'm putting out there. Because those actors, I mean, Mark Ruffalo, great actor, does a good Hulk. Getting up there in age, probably doesn't want to be the Hulk forever, right? Like, that's a lot of motion capture still with him. So I imagine they're going to reset possibly that. Oh, Hawkeye, Sunset Hawkeye as well, for good, rather than, you know, his show. So I think there's going to be a lot of those, you know, from the first Avengers saga, or I guess the Infinity Saga, who are still here, are going to be the ones who, the second half, who get rebooted, and then anything carried over that's working will carry over. Because I don't think Shang-Chi's not going to end up after end before Secret Wars, right? He's going to carry over. He's got some stuff to carry with that. So, but you know, I'm not too worried about it. I just think, you know, you're going to have to introduce new characters. And I think the X-Men is going to be something that will be a brand, them and the Fantastic Four carrying the MCU forward into that reboot era, if you will.
Yeah.
Because
I'm just going to be really curious.
Yeah.
How, like, a general audience, you know, reverberates with all of this, right? Because if you're just familiar with just comic book universes in general, like, it's just par for the course. Things get, like, reset and restarted all of the time, and you're just kind of used to it. You know, you're used to new writers, new artists being brought on to put their stab on a character. So this will kind of be like the first time that happens to the big general public. And I'll be curious to see what the headlines are like, right?
Well,
you know,
I think
they see that final.
I think it'll be
in that final Avengers.
It'll be easy. I think it'll be easy because I think this will end the multiverse. Everything's doing multiverse. You mentioned Invincible's doing multiverse. DC's been doing multiverse. You know, Marvel's been doing. Everything's got a multiverse now, right? I think if Marvel can wrap up a multiverse and get things streamlined, that'll be the headlines. No, like one true Marvel. Again, right? We're not going to veer off into multiverses. We're going to go back to one world, one problem. So I think that'll hopefully, knock on wood, be the lead news into that at the end of the day. But I'm excited for the X-Men. We've been enjoying X-Men. We're going to talk about X-Men 97 next, Mike, with X-Men 97 episode 5 review. We are a week and a half behind on this. Remember it. So this is episode 5, the mid-season one, not the newest Life, Death Part 2. So this is the one. I just watched it last night, Mike. So spoilers. I can we go ahead and say spoilers for X-Men 97?
Yes.
Going into this since 2 weeks old. Great.
Yeah, there's gonna be. Yeah, we're gonna have spoilers in and out for the rest of the episode with X-Men 97 and also Rebel Moon. So I gotta assume that there's some Venn diagram crossover there.
Yeah, exactly. So spoiler warning here. X-Men 97. I've been putting this episode off because the news for X-Men 97 hits me before I'm able to watch them, because my wife has to watch these shows. You haven't got to watch Life, Death Part 2 because your wife wants to watch it. So, like, you know, I'm like, okay, we gotta do this. So I've been going through the news articles last week and hitting it. I've just been putting this off because this episode is so fucking heavy, like emotionally, like on me as a person. I'm like, I don't want to watch people die. I don't want to watch, you know, one of the biggest massacres in X-Men comic books and in the animated thing happen on screen for this, especially with the death of Gambit, right? One of our favorite characters growing up. It's still to this day, Gambit's just such a smooth badass with a Cajun accent, and
so
to
cool,
see him die on screen.
Power set,
yeah,
awesome visuals to his look. I mean, I wasn't expecting any of it at all. Like the episode just kind of like lures you in with just a lot of like political intrigue. You know, they had been talking about Genosha this whole season so far, and we finally get to go there. You know, we're kind of in the middle of the season, so I thought maybe they were going to be toning it back for this episode. They're like, oh, this is where we save our budget. This is where we save our, a lot of our hours in, the animation.
Well,
department.
you also say
I was wrong.
well, I think also in the story arc setup, right? In the second half, you're either at their best or their worst, right? Like you set everyone up to be the best as they go into to lose it all, or they've lost it all and they have to build it back up. And everybody lost it all. We lost all. We have the potential death of Magneto. We didn't see his body, but we did see Gambit die and Rogue touch him and say, obviously the line repeated twice in this, I can't feel you, which was awful. But he did, in his last moments as a heroic sacrifice, blow up the Kaiju Sentinel with one of the coolest attacks ever, because obviously he can make things kinetically destroy. And I was like, oh, he got stabbed. He wasn't able to do his cool bike trick. He's gonna die here, but no, he took the Kaiju down with it. So he was a hero at the end of the day. But boy, it's just a fucking gut punch, dude. Like I was like, yeah, this sucks.
I mean, that's last scene was was like visually so impressive, like with the fidelity of like the vehicles, like you're talking about with like the motorcycle, and the action. And just the absolute dread that this kaiju brings over, like just blasting all of these like just innocent mutants. And they really just make you think, like, how are they going to get out of this one? Like, how can like
who's
one singular mutant?
Yeah.
It's like is Magneto considered an Omega level mutant?
That's what he says. When they right before they blast him and he protects the kids, they say Omega level detected, and it is Magneto. In that,
and he can't even really make a dent on this. And I brought this up before about this show, but the coolest thing about an animated world is like your suspension for the world is so much looser compared to if you're watching something live action. Now, if I was watching like a live action incarnation of a Gambit or really any superhero character, and they were going up against something that big, I would think like, oh, you have to show me so much more to convince me that they could destroy this. But like, it's Gambit. Like he's got this mystery to him. We don't know everything that there is about his powers. He can make objects like blow up and stuff like that. But what is he capable of if he goes
what's
to
the biggest
of, like,
level
risking his whole life? And it's just like, oh, it's cool. Like he gets stabbed. He's like, yeah, I'm going out on top. You're going to remember it. I'm going to blow you up. And it's like so amazing. And then it ends on that emotional, like last line with Rogue. And I was like, me and my wife were just shook. We just look at each other and we're like, did that just happen?
And I would say, you've been talking about the animation and all that stuff. And I could give two shits about it because it looks like the original, but like from a storytelling point of view, for you to care that much about these characters, right? That to me, that's a huge win overall. Like to care about these fictional characters. You have Magneto, spewing off, why would we let a war criminal run a country? He's like, well, everyone who's running other countries, why do you let them be war criminals, kind of thing. It was a very fun thing. But the relationship, love triangle between Gambit, Rogue, and Magneto, you get to see that history there. But then also on the other side, there's like the Cyclops, Madeline Pryor, Jean Grey kind of love triangle going on, right? Because they're clones of each other. Who's real? What's real? That really wasn't resolved either. It was just a very, again, like I said, emotionally draining episode overall. And you're like, you care about all these characters, and you're like, I want them to succeed. I want the mutants to have that life, that peace that they're working so hard for. And it just ends, even it cuts to black before Rogue's line's even done, right? Like it just ends with a voice over an empty screen. And I can't believe they're able to pull it off and make you care about all those characters along the way. I will say go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you first.
I mean, we haven't been hearing too much from the creator of the show because obviously just before it aired, they were fired and we don't know why, but they have been going on at least podcasts being interviewed, and he said that this episode was kind of meant to be the turn in the series where like the first half of the show was just supposed to be pure nostalgia, bring you back to the 90s of what it was like to be a kid watching X-Men, and then after this it's like, oh no, the show is going to be like a whole new animal after this episode.
And he mentioned that this is kind of inspired, quote unquote, by 9/11, right? Like literally, like people who grew up watching the show are living in a post 9/11 world. Like, what does that attack on your home country kind of look like, and how do you resolve that? And I'm interested to see their pickups, because the next episode, you haven't watched it yet, episode 6, doesn't touch on this yet. It kind of mixes in with some of the other things kind of going on. So I'm interested to see, where they pick up and how do they work through this kind of along the way, because there's a lot to be caught up in the last 4 episodes. And me and Mike were talking before the show started. There's 1 episode and then there's a 3-part ender, like the last 3 are the ending part. So, how are they going to wrap this up? I know there's more seasons and talks, at least a season 2, which would be great. I want to know kind of what's going on. I will say, I will put an asterisk on all this, Mike, though. And you know why I put an asterisk on this episode? Remember it. Because we get to see Cable for the first time in X-Men 97. And he shows up and he's like, hey, get him out.
I often forget that Cable is there. So, and also an animated show is always one step closer to the origin of a comic book than a live action adaptation is. So if we're one step closer or only one step removed from a comic book, no one ever really truly dies in a comic book world. So there could be a way to bring.
And what's Cable's power? I mean, what's he known for? He's known for time travel.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah, no, you're fine. He's known for time travel, right? So if he's there and he got sent back in time, he's like, I'm too late. Is he trying to come back and stop this? Like, is there going to be one of the episodes? I'm not saying that it's for sure. They could leave this as it is, and that's perfectly fine with me. They don't need to undo it. But is he trying to come back and stop this moment from happening, right, overall? And what would those repercussions have along the way? So maybe there is some time travel down the road where they do this or save some of the people. I don't know. But when Cable appears, that makes me remember, there's a reset button, right? There is one reset button along the way that we could lean into. So I'm interested. I'm intrigued. I love X-Men 97, Mike, every week. We had a delay on this one. I didn't get to watch it, but as soon as I finished it, I'm like, I'm watching the next one. Like, I'm binging these 2 in a row because I got to get in here. So I can't wait for you to watch Life Death Part 2, and we get to talk about that. Anything else you want to add about it before we jump into our movie review for the episode?
Oh God, let's get it over with.
Okay, so this weekend is Rebel Moon Part 2. The Scargiver debuted on Netflix. So this is the sequel to last December's Rebel Moon Part 1, The Child of Fire. And I will tell you, this is my own personal hell this weekend. Do you know why? Because I live with a Taylor Swift fan, and she had a new album come out on Friday. A surprise double album at that, so 31 songs. And also, so I'm surrounded by Taylor Swift fans. That's fine. I'm not here to knock them. They can have their music. They can have their artists. It's fine. They're just kind of culty a little bit, to that regard. That's fine. They're not hurting anybody. They can have their cult. But also, I'm surrounded by Zack Snyder fans watching Rebel Moon, and that's another cult that I really can't deal with. So I'm surrounded by 2 cults on both sides. So I'm just having an awful weekend overall dealing with these 2 cults. Now, again, not to hurt anybody. If you guys want to like it, you can like it all you want. I don't care what you like. Just don't be mean to people. Don't make it a campaign to hurt other people. But I was lucky to get down to sit down and get to watch by myself in the quiet of my home theater, Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. And I don't know what to say, Mike. I'm gonna let you kick this off because I don't have the words to even start this now.
Yeah, obviously this is spoilers, but I can't imagine anyone out there who is wanting to watch Rebel Moon Part 2 hasn't gone out of their way to watch it already. But I'm trying to figure out, I like analogies whenever I try to, describe how I'm feeling about something. And the closest I've come to describe watching Rebel Moon Part 2, or maybe even this whole mini franchise that Zack Snyder has kicked off, it's like Netflix has given Zack Snyder this beautiful raw piece of like ribeye steak, 3 inches thick, beautifully marbled. This is basically the analogy for the buckets of money they put at his feet to cook them a nice dinner. And he takes that piece of meat and just cooks an absolutely unremarkable dinner out of it. Mm-hmm. It's not like he's doing anything so unique that he's like coating it in wasabi and throwing Cheetos on top of it. And
it's unseasoned.
That's what's making it inedible. Yeah, it's like it's either unseasoned or he picked way too much of one seasoning and like only put it like around the edges of the steak. It's just you finish the meal and it's just absolutely forgettable, and then that's when the check comes and you realize how much more you could have gotten with that amount of money than this cut of meat that you were just served. Like I'm only imagining how many other shows that could have been greenlit, how many other original ideas that could have been made, and instead we just got this incredibly rote story from Zack Snyder. And I don't know what compelled us, Chris, to watch this movie. I think it's just we watched
curiosity. It's
movies.
Curiosity.
It's curiosity, and we desperately want to be proven wrong, but also we want to be proven right in the face of these Snyder fans that like Snyder doesn't have it anymore, and if he ever did have it, it was a long time ago. Luckily, this essentially costs us nothing to watch, you know, if you kind of plan your finances in a way to take in the cost of the streaming service.
I didn't pay Netflix. I'm not giving Netflix my money for these.
Oh, well, the great thing is, since we're house sitting, technically my algorithm is not going to be affected by part 2 because I watched it on their TV.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
So sorry to them watching this movie and throwing off their. I think they were watching a lot of like murder mysteries, so they're about to get an injection of a lot of bombastic action films. But it's just it's so unremarkably boring. Like, I pause it halfway through to go take a shower because I was more noticing that like my hair was getting greasy and I needed to hop in and take a shower because I started this in the morning. I was like, I just need to get this out of the way. I'm like, I didn't even get out of bed. I watched this movie in bed.
My comment to Mike when I found out about this, I was like, you woke up this morning and chose violence, obviously, because you
exactly
started off in the morning. I was at the store, but I was like, I don't even want to get into this yet.
Yeah, the reward to me though was like, as soon as this movie's done, I can go eat lunch, and I love lunch. It's the best part of the day. So I got it out of the way, and I was able to eat lunch, and that's when I came up with the steak analogy on the walk down to the pizza place at the end of the road. But it's just, I mean, I'm very curious to see a sample of people of which part do they prefer, the first part or the second part, or which one do they think is the least worst.
So I'm going to give you my take on that. How about that? Because I thought about this, and I think part 2 is better than part 1. And I think that, and I say that because part 1 sets up, tells you what it is from the beginning and just goes, and it's kind of set in like really one location. And you're not planet hopping and meeting all these people you don't give a shit about, and then a lot of them dying by the end of the movie, like the first one. Like, I forgot Charlie Hunnam was even in this movie, in the first part of this movie. Like, until I was like trying to find images to put on our new thing. I'm like, oh yeah, Charlie Hunnam was in that. Or like, you know, Ray Fisher is momentarily in this because he was momentarily in the first one. This one is like, okay, you've got your characters and you've got your villains and your heroes, and they've got a plan, and it's more, I wouldn't say it's like a heist, but it's very much like the back half of A New Hope. Once they get on the Death Star, like getting on the Death Star and blowing it, like escaping the Death Star, right, in A New Hope, very much feels like this. There's a lot of Star Wars references overall. He can say what the hell he wants. Yeah, this is Star Wars. Like,
there's literal like lightsabers in this movie. I mean, they look a little bit different, but for all intents and purposes, Zack Snyder put lightsabers. There's
lightsabers, and you know, there's you know, clone troopers, a big star destroyer in the sky, if you will, right, who can blow up, you know, the village and all this other fun stuff. So it's really very Star Wars, but like I think this one was very straightforward and to the point, more so than the first one. I'm not saying I enjoyed this. I have to look at our chat where I was telling you what was going on to remember part of this movie, because I'm like, I don't remember a lot of it going what the happenings and going ons of this. I do think, you know, we joke there's a lot of wheat harvesting in this very early on. A lot of slow motion wheat harvesting. If ever
the wheat in this movie is equivalent to the locusts in that last Jurassic World movie. Like, why is there so much focus on this? It's like Snyder felt like he was a genius when he was just like, oh my gosh, the bad guys want the wheat so much, we're gonna surround all of the structures in the village with wheat so they can't get to us. But in that fight scene, the bad guy comes to the realization of just like, oh, we just want the Scargiver, and then we're going to go back to the home world. And it's just like, I felt like he could have came to that realization. Well, he did come to the realization that she was on that planet before they even got there. So I was like, I don't know why they weren't lighting up these shacks.
Well,
he
wanted to bring her back. That's why. Once he was on the ship, he was like, "Yeah, I don't care. We're gonna capture her." He was very hyper focused. So I understand that a little bit. The backstory of like, there's a scene where everyone's given their backstory around a table. He's like, their backstories weren't even they weren't inviting. Like, I didn't care about their backstories here. That should have really happened in the first one either along the way. So, I mean, I even texted you, Mike, there's a literal Deus Ex Machina, God from the machine. A plot point showed up to save everybody that was literally a machine that acted like God in this movie, Mike, at one point. So there are things I really hated, but like, I at least understood where this was taking place and who was involved the whole time. So that's why I give part 2 a better pass than the first part. Mike, did you have a preference over part 1 or part 2 to answer your question, or give your question back?
They're both bad movies. I would say the first one to me is less bad, just because there's more variation of things happening in the first movie. Like, at least there's standout moments that I didn't like them, but at least I remember them. Like the ridiculous extra slow motion, like hippogriff scene that's in the first movie. I remember that. The planet that they go to try to make the deal for, I don't even remember what deal that they were making, but it was some alien planet where they just obscured the entire city in like fog. So they
one of the 3 actual aliens in both of these movies.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just saying I prefer the first one because I just remember more things about it. This second part is just like set up, and then I told you the second half of the movie, the battle scene, it's just all lasers and dust because that's all that is happening. And it was just nothing out of the ordinary is happening. Like none of these characters have particular interesting traits except for one, and you told me it was the only thing you actually liked about the movie. It was the woman with the glowing red katana. So she's the only visually interesting bit of the film.
Well, she's also visually, and I think she has the best backstory because her backstory was revealed that she has to cut her own arms off and put these mechanical arms on to get her sword fighting abilities, right, kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's not like, oh, I'm a general and watch my people get killed because someone lied to me kind of deal, right? Or, hey, I was, my planet was freed and now I want to fight for them. Like, she had like the most, I guess, personal experience of the whole thing. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. So I'll give her that credit in that regard. But the rest of it was just, again, it's like Star Wars all over again. It just, there was a lot of cutaways I felt in this one for being PG-13 that I feel we're going to get in the R-rated version. Like the villain's head gets cut off at the end and they kind of just quick cut away from it. I'm like, oh, we're going to get that in the final R-rated director's cut of this stuff, right? Like there's a bunch of, we cut away from some early sex scenes early on where she's given her backstory and they're like, naked kind of thing. I'm like, oh, we're going to get a lot more nudity and sex scenes later in the R-rated. I don't want to watch the R-rated cuts. Like, I don't care. Like, they can't make this better than what it is.
I am never watching these movies ever again if I can help it, and it has the gall to end on a cliffhanger of a much bigger story.
I think that's the worst part of it.
Yeah, it's like Snyder is just getting high on his own supply so much that he thinks like, oh, they're going to be clamoring for this. I think I saw a headline where I don't know if he wants to make 6 more movies or if it's going to be a total of 6 films,
it was total 6. It's a trilogy of 2s is what he summed it up.
There is absolutely no way that can happen. Like, I know, Chris, you were warning me that Netflix makes all of its decision based off its watch time and algorithm. Yeah. But how on earth can 2 undeniably rotten movies get 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th installments? I just don't know how it could happen, especially in this new kind of phase of Netflix where they're trying to tighten up and stay the only profitable streaming service right now that's just not running on investment.
The problem is Rebel Moon has product fucking tie-ins still. Remember the popcorn things, the Steins? Like, they're at Walmart for Rebel Moon Part 2. Like, more merchandise for this movie, toys. I didn't even know they made stuff for Netflix like that are out there. So they're trying to Star Warsify this stuff. But I don't think if you made like the end of this movie is the whole first part of these two movies is a lie to get to the last line of this movie, which feels a lot like, do you remember that Independence Day sequel they made? Do you remember that? Like at the end of that, they were like, we're going to go to the aliens planet and kick their ass. That's what this felt like at the end. They're like,
wow.
Like at the end of this, it's another podcast I listen to. They call it "The Game Is On," where at the end of it, it's like, "Oh, the game is on." They're saying they're telling you they're going to make another movie, then they never do, kind of thing. And that's what the Independence Day felt. That's what this felt like. Like at the end of it, literally, like, you had to kill, the princess. She forgave you. You had to kill her because your adopted dad told you to, and then he turns on you, and very, very stereotypical bland shit, as you mentioned. And then at the end, like, oh, the princess isn't dead. You're like, why didn't you start this off to say that? Like, that's what we needed to begin with, right? Like, yeah, that's the fun part, not the, hey, oh yeah, by the way, she's not dead.
Also, like, who gives a flying fuck about this princess? Absolutely no work has been done to endear me to, like, the innocent people of the galaxy, if you will. They spent so much time, like, trying to develop these bad guys that I don't even really know who the good guys are supposed to be. Obviously, these rebels are supposed to be good, but they have that whole flashback, right, it was absolutely horrendous and awful. It's like this Julius Caesar, like, betrayal of, like, the king and queen. Visually, it looks so stupid. It looks like they're in theater costumes, like literal, like musical theater, like king and queen costumes on spaceships. Like, it's so, like, literal and one-to-one. It's so weird and bizarre. And that's even set up with the point of saying, like, oh, they are finally going to decommission their last dreadnought because they're expansion.
They're commissioning it. They're sending off the last one called the Peacemaker, is what it was. They were making, because we don't need to make any more dreadnoughts anymore.
Yeah, and to me, I just took it as like, oh, so their long-standing era of, like, colonization of the solar system or galaxy is finally come to the end, and then, oh, the king and queen get slain. Like, they don't seem like they were innocent either, so it's just like, I don't understand who are the good people supposed to be, who are they fighting for? Like, well, this guy was a dick and you cut his head off. Like, okay, movie can be over now. It's just... it's so underthought. It's so stupid. Snyder gets high on his own supply. He thinks he's like God's gift to Earth. I cannot stand his filmmaking anymore.
Well, I can't stand this product, but I don't think it's him. I can't hate the person. I can hate his art because I don't know him as a person. I will say, whoever just keeps greenlighting his stuff and not telling him no, that's the problem, right? Like, someone needs to step in and be like, as a viewer, you need to make your content more digestible along the way. And, his answer is always going to be the director's cut. Well, what happened with this, the Justice League cut? When you can take the feedback in over 6 years and then release something, obviously, or like how long was it, 3-4 years, and make something, then yeah, you're going to make it better because you've had the internet tell you what was wrong and what was missing. I'm not saying the Justice League is better, but like I can't hate him. I can hate that no one is telling him no and no one's reining him in as a company, right, from Netflix. Like, who there is not helping the procedure along the way, if you will. Because it doesn't like, it's not like he made a movie, gave it to them and said, you have to show this. There are people there who could be like, we can do better, we can do more, but like that's what's missing for this.
Yeah. To me, it just feels like the jig is finally up, right? Snyder finally got to the point in his career where he could make whatever he wanted, which was an original script. Obviously, he had nobody butting in, giving him notes, because he made exactly what he wanted to put it on screen. And it's not good. Like, I could see somebody, just setting down, they have other stuff going on in their day on the weekend. They just throw it up on the screen, and then just occasionally they walk by the screen and go, oh, what's going on? Okay. It's like very surface level. I could see somebody getting some sort of extraction of enjoyment out of it, but to have the gall to build out this whole web of what he thinks is sophisticated storytelling, it's just not anywhere close.
I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it elevates anything above like the era of Westerns, right? There were just so many Westerns they're not bad. They're just following the same formula, and the formula is what he wants it to be. Like you mentioned, yes, this is a background movie. I'm not paying to go see this. I'm not telling people they need to go watch it. But as a movie, it's competent. It does have a start and a stop. It's got the story along the way. It could be better, absolutely. But I've seen much worse films along the way. I've seen movies. I saw Madam Web, Mike. I paid to watch Madam Web this year, which is bad.
It's just like... It's like I'm obviously getting myself into like a fury because I'm bringing in so much other externalities to the movie. Yeah. But if I go back to the beginning of what I was talking about, it's just unremarkable.
It is the biggest sin of film is you didn't try anything, right? Like if you end up with a 1 or a 10, great, you tried something and failed so spectacularly, people will talk about your failure. If you try something, try your best and say, I've done the best thing I've ever done, and it's a 5, then that is the biggest sin to me because you didn't really try anything new. You just did everything so by the book or by the numbers or so blandly that your potato salad sucks. Don't bring this back to my pitch in. I don't want your potato salad that has no seasoning in it, okay?
It's the biggest sin of the current generation of just being mid. There was this one moment in the movie I wanted to bring up because it was so weird to me. So when Cora, the titular Scargiver, is fighting her way off of the ship when she's trying to get back to her escape ship or whatever, there's kind of like a little bit of like a left to right tracking shot where she's fighting through some people. And then, like, the last person to the right side of the screen is holding, like, this lightsaber or whatever. Mm-hmm. So she beats the guy up, shoots him. I don't know exactly what she does. And he, like, drops his, like, lightsaber sword or whatever. She grabs it for a brief second, and it's, like, I don't know if it, like, electrocuted her or if it was, like, hot.
I think like, they're heated because they all had I looked. They were all had gloves on. That's what I was looking for. People were wearing gloves.
And she, like, and then she, like, dropped it. But then, like, she picked it back up. And then she just used it later in the scene. So I'm just curious, like, how she
wrapped it though. She wrapped fabric around it so she could use it.
And like, but those are the things that kind of like drive me crazy. That like Snyder will like zero in on little things like this, like, oh, I am so into this world, I'm gonna make sure that this electric energy power sword has to be worn with a glove for no particular reason, and like there's really no like payoff to it. Like I was expecting, like I don't know, maybe this did happen in the movie and I was just zoning out. I was expecting like, oh, maybe the bad guy tries to pick it up, or somebody like sacrifices their bare hand to pick it up and stab somebody. But so it's like, why go out of the way to take this brief moment in your movie to show this one small micro little detail for there to be absolutely no payoff? It just seems like this is where like a creative producer like comes in and go like, knock that shit off, get the movie going. We don't need these little moments that end up being nothing. Right. Just like the zombie in Army of the Dead that had the electric glowing eyes. This is the shit that he does that drives me crazy. Yeah. It's like he's trying to add these things in that'll pay off never because no one's going to make more of his stuff because it sucks. Well, I'm getting so angry.
You don't need to be this angry. This is not anger inducing. I think you've taken this too far because it is not anger inducing. It's just like, that's what he wants. He wants a reaction out of you, Mike, and you're giving him what he wants. To me, it's just like it's like
Snyder.
I will never. I'll never recommend this to anybody. I'll tell people exactly what it is, and I'm like, oh, that cool robot, not in it, not in either of them. He shows up and blows up a tank at the end because you need someone to kill the tank whenever everyone's about to die, and all this other stuff. So he had this cool little action scene, but that was it. Like, I can't recommend this to anybody, and I'm just like, there's going to be more of this. I know there's going to be at least one more. It may not be 2 more, Mike. It may not be 4 more, but I feel like there's going to be 1 more. But I don't know if it's going to live on Netflix or if maybe another person will pick it up, right? What other streaming company is going to be like, we need the numbers Snyder's supposedly pulling in? I would be interested to see those numbers and see if somebody picks them up, because I think that's what it's going to be. Whoever wants the Snyder headlines, that they're the ones who's going to buy him next at the end of the day.
I feel like this franchise just goes absolutely dark and silent. We don't hear anything from it for like 2 or 3 years. And then there's like a murmur or a rumor that Snyder wants to finish the story for the fans, so he's going to make like a comic book or like an anime or something animated to wrap up the story.
Time out.
Nothing happens.
Time out before you even get it. So they've already canceled the animated show. They've already canceled it. There is a comic book though. The comic book is out. I think it's out or coming out, but they did cancel. I did read this, the animated series. So I think he said it's not coming out anymore. So somebody has canned the animated thing already. So at least be happy that's not coming your way. Because I did that. I did my homework before we got into this, Mike, to double check all that fun stuff. So.
And the things I could have spent 2 hours doing this weekend.
I thought it was. I literally thought it was going to be 2.5 hours, and I'm like, and then you mentioned. I'm like, oh, at least it's only 2 hours with credits at the end of the day. I will say, oh my God, I've forgotten everything about this movie. The one thing that frustrated me, Mike, and I will tell you this is my last bit of this. The no payoff zone, as you mentioned, they set up in the first movie. We're like, oh, they're gonna know that their team has been killed. Everyone's there, but the one person they saved was a kid who's on their team who reports back and says grain production's on normal. And then he has a relationship, or he's in love with like the young girl they saved from the first movie. And I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna kill the boy, and it's gonna ruin the relationship. Or they're gonna kill the girl and ruin the relationship, right? Like that's the point. Like you're like, oh, or someone's gonna sacrifice themselves for this previous warmongering dude, so they can have a relationship, a young love relationship, and nothing fucking happens with that either. Like, boy, howdy, did they just leave that on the floor? A lot of time spent on those guys lovingly gazing at each other's eyes while slowly cutting wheat and training
Chris,
to not do anything.
You just keep reminding me about insane things that happen in this movie. Like, I couldn't get my brain off the fact that when they're doing the montage where they're training the villagers and they show them like slicing these like straw like scarecrows or whatever, I just keep thinking like there's a line of like 20 villagers that all need to practice on this scarecrow, but the first person to walk up to it has already cut it down to bits. Mm-hmm. Is there somebody just off camera, off to the side, that's just constantly making these scarecrows to train the village? I was like, this cannot be the most efficient way to teach these people how to fight, to constantly make scarecrows for them to slice at.
And I think I also told you this village of 40 people somehow keeps having more and more people show up out of nowhere, because like there's not a lot of people here in those 5 houses, right? And I'm like, by the time this is all said and done, they've killed probably 30 of these people. So there's like 10 left in this village, and they consider that the victory at the end of the day, right? Which to me is my, I can't grab my scope around this village because I'm like, I don't understand. There's like really only 6 buildings, right? Like where are all of these people coming from and living in this little village along the way? I just don't quite understand it because the number of people just kept changing.
Like, do they have like neighbors or something? Like, is this the only village for like hundreds of miles?
Well, we talked about that. They come to this one planet and find this one tiny village that has the grain that happens to be where this lady is hiding away. A lot of thought, not a lot of execution. But at the end of the day, as Mike said, to me, this one, if I had to rank the two, this one's the better of the two because it's a lot less planet hopping, and I don't remember the first one. I remember this one because I just watched it. But like, I really think, as you nailed on the head here, this is just meh. At the end of the day, meh. There's nothing else above it. I can't go above a 5. I can't go low because it's not bad. It's a competent film. It's just not anything for me, and I can't recommend this to anybody. So I think that's my last note. Anything you want to add on this before we get on out of here? Let's get out.
No, this is done. I'm done with this.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll see when the R-rated cuts. Hopefully, they just cut as one big movie later down the road when they do the R-rated cut. So we'll see how that happens down the road. But anyway, Mike, if people want to know what you're up to, what you're doing, where you're raging at, where can they find you?
Oh, find me raging in my cage with my webcomics at liferewardsrisk.com and pickledcomics.com. Chris, if people want to find you, where are you?
You can find me on Instagram, Valdan87, VALDAN, or video game systems of the same name. If people want to know more about our show, where they can find us, listen to us, watch our new background that you made, where can they get all them goodies at?
All you got to do is head on over to superheroslate.com. That is the best place to find all of the grain we grow for this show.
It's in slow motion.
Eating it off in slow motion.
It's slow motion grain. Don't worry, guys. We won't go too fast. Yes,
it's not gluten-free, so stay away from that. You You can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you love to listen to find podcasts. We got merch at superheroslate.com/store. We love hearing from you. Let us know what you're watching. Which part 1 or part 2 did you like better? For
don't talk to us about this. Talk to us about
or did
Fallout.
you make the better decision to not watch it at all and you watched Fallout? Because Chris could have watched at least 2 episodes. We could have talked about the first 3 episodes of Fallout, but no, we had to fit in Rebel Moon part 2, unfortunately.
My wife was working on something in the background while I was watching this, and she has no idea about the first Rebel Moon, and she's like, what the hell's going on over there? I'm like, I'm not explaining this to you. This is not worth the energy.
Yes, purge that from your brain. But we love our super fans. If you want to be a super fan of this show, all you got to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we'll be here every week, folks.
That's right, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.